The wind was cold and silent as Jack stood alone under the twin moons of Velthor 9. His hands were shaking and his boots were covered in blue dust. He looked down at the body of Alira lying still on the silver ground. Her skin was pale and glowing. Faintly like the stars above, she was not just an alien girl to him anymore. She was the one who saved him when no one else did. She was the one who smiled even when her planet was falling apart, and now she was gone. Jack knelt beside her and placed his hand gently on her forehead. She felt cold but peaceful, like someone who had finally escaped pain. He wanted to cry, but the tears would not come. He was tired and broken and empty inside. He looked around the quiet alien valley where flowers never bloomed and the ground always hummed softly. There were no birds, no wind, no sound, only him and her, and the memory of what they shared. He began to dig. Each handful of dirt was heavy. Each second felt like a year. He could barely breathe, but he kept going. She deserved better than this barren place, but it was all he had. This was where they met. This was where they laughed. This was where she fell. It had to be here. The hole was not deep, but it was enough. Jack laid her body down carefully. He placed a small metal capsule beside her chest. Inside, it was a message, a voice recording of him saying her name. He hoped someday someone would hear it. He hoped someday someone would remember her. He placed a thin silver blanket over her face and whispered something in a language only the two of them understood, a language of looks, a language of quiet trust. He covered the grave with soft dirt and blue rocks. He stood up slowly and looked at the sky. Stars stretched endlessly above him. He wished one of them would fall and take him with it. He turned around and walked away. Each step was harder than the last. Behind him something shifted. The ground near the grave glowed for a moment, then faded. No sound came from it, no movement, just a faint blue shimmer under the soil like starlight trying to escape. Jack did not see it. He kept walking toward his ship. The wind picked up and carried a strange scent like burned metal and flowers that never grew. He paused but did not turn back. Inside the soil beneath the rocks, Alira's fingers twitched. Her chest rose just once and stopped. Her eyes opened for a single second. They glowed bright blue and then dimmed. The energy around her body pulsed slowly like a machine charging in silence. Moons moved across the sky. The valley stayed quiet. But something ancient had started, something no human had ever seen, and Jack had no idea what he had buried. He reached his ship and looked one last time at the valley. He whispered her name again and closed the hatch. The engine started and the ground shook a little. Far below the surface, a soft humming grew louder. He left the planet that night. He thought it was the end. But the stars had other plans, and so did she. The stars did not forget her. The planet did not let go. The sky had watched everything and kept her secret safe, a secret that would one day rise again. A secret made of stardust and pain and memory. Alira was not gone, not really. Something had awakened inside her, something she once feared, something that was never meant to return, but now it had, and it was waiting right beneath the grave, right beneath the moons, right beneath the silence, waiting to come back from the stars. Jack stared at the stars from the window of his small Earth station apartment as the distant hum of city lights flickered across the glass. 3 weeks had passed since he left Velthor 9. 3 weeks of silence, 3 weeks of no sleep. The memory of her face haunted every breath, every time he blinked. He saw her eyes. Every time he tried to forget, he heard her voice, soft, faint, not in his ears, in his mind, like a whisper from comet dust. He told himself it was grief, told himself it was guilt, but the feeling did not stop. Sometimes while walking the metal halls, he would feel someone behind him. He would turn, nothing, just cold air and flickering lights. One night he woke up to a strange sound, not from the outside, from the walls, from the air, a rhythm, a pulse, like a heartbeat, but not human. He stood still and listened. The sound faded, but the message remained in his head. It was not words, it was emotion, it was fear, it was longing, and it came from one direction only, Velthor 9. He rushed to his console and scanned for any signals. From that system, nothing at first. Static noise, then a burst, a single short transmission that lasted 2 seconds. The sound made his blood freeze. It was her voice. She said his name just once. No static, no distortion, only her voice, alive, clear, calling him. Jack leaned back. His heart raced, his mind raced faster. He checked the logs again and again. Same result. The signal had come from the exact coordinates of her grave. He opened the old message capsule recording, compared the voice, perfect match. Same tone, same frequency, same breath between syllables. It was impossible, but it was real. He contacted the space agency. Filed a mission request, denied, too dangerous, too far, no support. He packed his private gear, sold his old metals, bought fuel from a black market trader, and launched his personal cruiser into orbit. He plotted a direct route to Velthor 9 and locked the coordinates. During the journey, he kept hearing her. Sometimes it was humming, sometimes it was laughter, sometimes it was just breathing. He knew he was either losing his mind or finding something no one else had ever known. As the ship entered Velthor's orbit, the sky looked the same. Twin moons, quiet winds, blue dust. He landed on the same ridge, walked down the same valley. His boots left fresh marks next to the old ones. He reached the grave, or what was left of it. The rocks were scattered, the soil was disturbed, the capsule was missing. No signs of animals, no signs of scavengers. Only one strange mark carved into the ground beside the grave, a spiral made of perfect circles. It pulsed faintly with a light that shimmered like star glass. He touched it. His fingers burned but left no mark. He pulled back and looked around. Everything was still, everything was quiet. But something watched him. He found a trail, not footprints, not tire marks, something else, shallow indentations glowing faintly, leading away from the grave into the edge of the valley storm zone. He hesitated. The storm zone was unstable, lightning without clouds, winds without warning. Time behaved differently there, but the trail was clear. He followed. The wind picked up. Small rocks lifted into the air without touching anything. His combs began to fail. His steps felt slower, like walking through water. The trail led to a hollow ridge, a low tunnel covered by silver vines. He crawled inside. The air changed. He could breathe, but it felt thicker, warmer, closer. He reached a chamber lit by crystals, walls covered in symbols, strange patterns that moved when he blinked. In the center of the room was the capsule, open, empty. Next to it, a single strand of hair, long silver, glowing at the tips. His heart pounded. He picked it up, held it to the light. It was warm. It pulsed behind him. Something moved, a shadow, no shape, just presence. He turned slowly. Nothing, but the feeling remained. Something was there, watching, listening. He stepped backward toward the tunnel. The walls vibrated. The symbols began to shift. They formed a shape, her face, not static, not carved, alive. Her eyes looked at him through the stone, and he heard her voice again, in his mind, clearer now. Closer, she said. One word returned, then silence. He staggered outside as the wind roared around him. The sky above had changed. The moons were gone. The stars formed a circle, a signal. He was not alone on Velthor 9, and she was not resting in peace. She was awake somewhere, waiting for him to understand. The wind stopped as Jack stepped into the open again, and the sky above Velthor 9 held no stars, only a dark curtain stretched wide, with one glowing crack splitting through the black like a scar across space. His breath caught in his throat, but he could not stop walking forward, as if the air itself pushed him. His boots crushed strange glass like grass underfoot, and every step felt like it echoed into the ground. He reached the spot where her grave used to be and stood still, staring at the empty place where he once wept, where he once whispered goodbye. Now the ground had changed. The soil was no longer soft and blue, but hardened like crystal, pulsing with light that came from below. A hum vibrated through his legs. It was steady, like a heartbeat. He crouched and touched the surface. It was warm, too warm for this cold planet. His fingers twitched and pulled away, but something clung to them, not physical, something inside. A thought. He looked around. No creatures, no wind, only silence, and that silent sound that came from inside the ground itself. He scanned the area with his old field device. The screen flickered, then went black, a burst of static followed by a single phrase glowing on the screen. Her bones remember. Jack stared. That was impossible. No system could generate that message, not without command input, not without code. He checked again. The phrase blinked, then vanished. Suddenly the sky cracked, not a sound, not a flash, but a fracture, as if space had a mirror, and someone tapped it gently. Lines of light formed above him in a perfect spiral. He stood, backed away from the grave. The hum grew louder. Then something rose from the center of the crystal field, a spire, thin and long like bone, white with veins of blue light. It stopped at the height of Jack's chest and held a smooth sphere at its peak. He moved closer. The sphere rotated slowly, showing reflections, not of him, but of her, Alira, alive, moving, breathing. He blinked, and the images changed. He saw her walk through alien cities, stand among stars, place her hand on glass that cracked with energy. He saw her cry. He saw her scream. He saw her smile, then nothing. The sphere went dark. Jack fell to his knees. His mind spun. He wanted to believe it. Wanted to reach for that tiny hope, but doubt clawed inside. This could be a trick, a glitch, a ghost from grief. Then the spire spoke, not in sound, not in voice, but in rhythm, pulses of light, long, short, short, long. He recognized it, old language, first contact. Protocol, universal pulse pattern. He counted, translated, decoded. The message said only 3 words: she is becoming. He dropped the scanner, backed away again. The sphere pulsed one more time, then shattered. No noise, no debris, just light rising like smoke, forming a figure, thin, tall, unclear. He stepped back again, raised his arm to block the brightness. The figure tilted its head, raised an arm and vanished. No trace. No signal, no clue. Only one thing remained, a single object at the base of the spire. He reached down, picked it up. It was her pendant, the one she wore when he first met her. The one made from black glass and stardust. He held it tight. It was warm, still warm. He placed it in his jacket, looked around once more, and turned toward the ridge butt. The valley had changed. The ground behind him was now a map, not drawn, not carved, but alive. Lines of glowing veins spread from the grave. Across the valley, up the hills, down the cracks. He followed them with his eyes until they all pointed to one thing. Mountain far in the north, hidden by eternal storms, a place no human had reached, but the lines pulsed toward it, calling, beckoning. He knew what he had to do. He marked the coordinates, packed his gear, and started the journey. Every step felt heavier. The never stopped. It followed him inside his bones, inside his thoughts. He knew she was alive now, not just in memory, not just in hope, alive, changing, becoming, and he had to find her before the stars took her completely, before she forgot what it meant to be a Larabear. It was too late. Jack climbed the sharp ridge with slow steps as the silver fog wrapped around his legs like vines, whispering secrets he could not hear. The mountain ahead was covered in dark crystal sheets that shimmered like frozen galaxies, and each layer seemed to shift whenever he looked too long. The sky above him remained still, with no stars, no sun, only a soft glow that felt like twilight stretched forever. He had not spoken for hours. There was no one to hear him. Only the voice inside his head that sometimes felt like his own and sometimes no. Reached the top of the ridge and saw it. A crater hidden between the cliffs, pulsing with light. At its center stood a structure, no walls, no roof, only tall spirals, made of unknown material, reaching upward like fingers trying to touch something that had long gone. He moved forward slowly, his steps careful. The closer he got, the heavier the air became, not in weight, but in memory. Each breath tasted like a thought from long ago. Each blink showed him fragments of something not his. He entered the circle of spirals. They vibrated with sound that did not travel through ears. It went through bones, through blood, through thought. At the center lay a pod, floating just above the ground, held in place by light, not wires, not gravity, just pure glowing energy. Inside the pod he saw Heralira. Her body rested peacefully. Her skin now shined with patterns that looked like constellations. Her eyes were closed, but they moved under the lids as if she was dreaming. She wore no suit, no armor, only a thin layer of stardust that shimmered with every pulse of the pod. Jack stepped closer. His heart raced. He placed his hand near the pod but stopped. The energy reacted. It glowed brighter, and a voice filled his mind, not hers, not his. A third voice, cold, ancient, mechanical, but a library birth protocol engaged. He fell backward. The ground caught him gently. The pod floated higher, and the spirals began to rotate, not fast, but with purpose. A voice returned. Biological host identified. Star memory integration at 62%. Personality core stable. Rebirth irreversible. Jack crawled forward. He shouted, not with sound but with thought. Who are you? What are you doing to her? Is she still alive? The voice paused, then returned. She's alive. She is more. She is you. Screamed, but nothing left his lips. His throat burned. His chest felt heavy. He looked up and saw her eyes open. Inside the pod, blue, brighter than any light, brighter than the stars. She looked at him, and he heard her voice inside his mind, soft, broken, real. Jack. He stood, reached for the pod. Jack, I remember his hand touched the light. It did not burn. It accepted him, welcomed him. The pod opened slowly. She floated forward. Her feet touched the ground without sound. She looked different, taller, brighter, alien, but her eyes still hers. She stepped forward, touched his chest. You buried me. He nodded. Tears formed, but did not fall. I was not meant to return, he whispered. In his mind then, why are you here? She looked up at the sky. Because they called me. Because something greater waits. Because I am the bridge, he asked. Bridge to what? She closed her eyes. Between stars and soil. Between memory and creation. Between who I was and what I must become. He stepped back. His heart could not understand, but his soul felt the weight. She turned. Faced the spirals. They gave me life again, but took something in return, he asked. What did they take? She placed a hand on her chest. Time her skin began to glow with symbols moving, changing. She gasped, fell to her knees. Jack ran and caught her. She looked up at him. I cannot stop it. The transformation is not complete. I need one more key, he asked. What key? Where? She pointed to the northern light. A place where no sun shined, where old ruins whispered truths. There lies the memory core. Without it, I will lose myself. He held her tight. Then we go now. She stood. Her body flickered. A wave of energy pulsed out, and the spirals collapsed into dust. The pod vanished. The light faded. Only they remained standing in silence beneath a sky without stars, and above them something moved, watching, waiting. The stars were not silent anymore. They moved across the barren land with wind behind them and silence ahead, as if the planet itself paused to watch two souls cross its forgotten veins. Jack kept his eyes on Alira, whose steps left glowing traces that vanished before he could blink. As though time feared what followed her path, the markings on her skin pulsed brighter, now not in rhythm with her breath, but with something older, something deeper, something not human. She did not speak, but Jack felt her thoughts, not words, not sentences. Just emotions wrapped in shapes. His mind struggled to hold. One feeling rose above the rest, pain not physical, a deep twisting ache that echoed inside her very bones. They reached a canyon split wide like a scar across the surface of Velthor 9. The map she summoned earlier glowed faintly in her palm and pointed down into the shadows where no light touched the stone. Jack looked at her. She nodded once without fear. He descended. She followed with a grace not born from practice but from something newly awakened. The walls of the canyon shimmered with hidden scripts, lines of alien code that crawled like insects across the rock. They whispered, not aloud, but in Jack's head. He could not understand them, but Alira could. She placed her hand against the stone, and the wall cracked open behind it. A chamber of silver mist. They stepped inside. The air was thick, heavy, alive. At the center of the chamber floated a sphere, dark, still, waiting. Galira stopped. Her legs shook. Her skin glowed brighter. Jack caught her before she fell. Her body was burning with energy, eyes wide, mouth open, breathing fast. Her voice came out broken. It is inside me. He held her close. What is this? Star sponge touched her chest. Her skin opened like light parting water. No blood, no wound. Just brilliance from her core. A shape pushed outward, not flesh, not machiniform, made of stars. It pulsed, then faded. She collapsed. Jack screamed her name. No sound escaped his throat. He laid her down on the soft crystal floor. She opened her eyes slowly. I carry more than memory. Now I carry the seed of something they lost eons ago. I was not brought back for love or redemption. I was brought back to be a vessel. Jack backed away, and Alira stood again. Her feet floated above the ground. Her voice changed, still hers, but layered like three minds speaking in one breath. The starspawn were born before light. They are not evil, but endless. Their only crime was surviving. He asked why they chose her. She smiled, a sad smile, a distant one. Because I was dying with peace in my heart, because I loved a human without fear, because I whispered my name to the stars before I stopped breathing. The sphere at the center cracked. Light spilled from within it, rose into the air and moved toward her. Jack reached out. Stop. What if it hurts you? She shook her head. It completes me. The light entered her chest. Her body arched. Energy shot across the chamber walls. Jack fell back, covered his face. When the light faded, she stood taller, eyes now silver, hair flowing like smoke. She looked at him, and in her gaze he saw galaxies. I remember everything. He stood slowly. Are you still? Alira walked to him, placed her hand on his cheek. I am Alira, and I am more. I am memory. I am echo. I am the child of dust and starlight. He closed his eyes. His heart did not fear her. It beat louder. She whispered, but there is a cost. He opened his eyes. This form is not mine forever. Once the alignment ends, I return to the stars. He held her hand tighter. Then let us make every second count. She nodded, but a tear slid from her eye. First one, then none. The stars do not cry, but Alira did, because the universe had given her back, only to take her away again. And Jack, the man who buried her, now walked beside her toward the edge of time itself. Together, for As long as starlight allowed, the sky cracked open above them as if the planet itself sensed what Alira had become and feared what she might awaken by standing still for too long. Jack looked up and saw not clouds, not stars, but a spiraling storm of light that twisted in impossible directions. Colors bled into each other like oil across water, and within the spinning center something pulsed. A hole not in the sky, but in real. Alira turned her head slowly and her eyes reflected the rift. Like mirrors that remembered everything they ever saw, she did not speak, she did not move. She simply stared as the energy above pulled pieces of the canyon upward. Rocks lifted into the air, dust froze mid-fall even. Jack felt his boots losing touch with the ground. He reached for her hand and found it already reaching for his. The moment they touched, the world around them shattered into silence. No sound, no air, only pressure. A pulse erupted from her chest and the rift widened like a wound in the skin of the universe. They floated, they rose, they vanished. Inside the rift everything changed. There was no up, no down, only motion without distance. Light moved like rivers and shapes drifted like thoughts. Jack could not breathe, but he did not need to. Alira was guiding him, her glow spread like wings, her body no longer just flesh, more like memory wearing the shape of something human. They passed through layers of time. He saw echoes of her past. He saw her running across alien landscapes, laughing under twin suns, bleeding in silence, dying in his arms. He saw himself alone, lost, digging her grave with hands that never stopped shaking. Then all of it faded. They landed on a cold surface that reflected nothing, a place outside the stars, a realm between existence and decay, the void plateau. Alira dropped to one knee. Her breath came hard and her light flickered. Jack held her by the shoulders. He asked if she was hurt. She shook her head. Not hurt. Changed again. She stood, looked at the endless field of darkness that stretched farther than sight. In the distance, a tower stood alone, its walls pulsed with symbols. Its top pointed toward no star. Alira pointed. That is the core, the final piece. They walked toward it. The ground felt like walking on glass. Each step left no mark. Jack looked around. The stars above this place were dead, frozen lights that never moved. No wind, no heat. Only a hum that whispered promises he could not understand. Alira stopped. She turned to him and touched his forehead. From here I must go alone. He refused. He would not let her face whatever waited without him. She smiled. If you follow, the core will reject us both. He clenched his fists. Tears pressed behind his eyes, but he did not let them fall. He stepped back, gave her space. She nodded once, then walked alone toward the tower. Each step she took made the symbols glow brighter. The door opened before she touched it. She entered. Jack waited. Minutes passed, or hours, or maybe none at all. Then the ground shook, the tower split apart. Light burst upward like a fountain of energy. Alira rose into the air with arms outstretched. Her markings burned with gold. Her hair whipped in spirals of flame and ice. The core had accepted her, but something else had awakened from below the void. A shadow emerged, a creature without form, without eyes, without voice. It reached for her with tendrils of hunger. Jack screamed no words, just will. He ran forward. Ella saw him, her face full of light and sorrow. She reached down and sent a wave of energy that froze the creature in place. She landed beside Jack, falling into his arms. Her voice trembled. I have the core, but I have little time. He asked, what now? She looked at the sky above. A spiral formed, a doorway back to their world. She opened her hand. A spark floated upward and pierced the spiral. It opened. Earth called them back. They stepped through. The void closed behind, and something ancient whispered in its silence. The wind on Earth felt too soft, too slow, too still compared to the storm of light they had just escaped, and Jack could not stop staring at the sky as if expecting it to open again at any moment. Alira stood beside him, her feet barely touching the grass, her eyes no longer glowing, yet deeper than any ocean he had known. Her body looked human, her face looked the same, but her presence felt like a quiet star resting in human skin. She placed her hand on his shoulder and whispered through thought, we are not done. Jack nodded because he felt it too. Something followed them back, not the creature from the void, not the tower, not the shadow, but the echo of what she had become. They moved through the quiet hills where Earth slept in peace. But peace was always an illusion, and illusions always break. That night the stars shifted, not one, not two, all of them. Astronomers around the world saw it. Governments went silent, satellites blinked offline. But Jack already knew they were watching her, not to find her, not to destroy her, but to wait, because Alira had brought back more than the core. She brought back the memory of a species older than time, and with it, a signal. The night cracked open above. The forest where they stood, a ship appeared. Without sound, without light, without motion, it hovered, then landed without bending a single blade of grass. A ramp, open, not metal, not fire. Just shadow parting like a curtain. Figures stepped out, not alien, not robotic, not living. They moved like thoughts. Wrapped in cloth, Illyra stepped forward. Jack tried to follow. She stopped him. This is not your moment, he wanted to argue, but her eyes. They told him she needed him to trust. She approached the figures. No words were spoken, only pulses between them. She lifted her hands. The markings on her skin reawakened, golden, silver, violet. The figures responded by kneeling. Jack watched in awe and fear and hope and sadness. She turned to him. I was not brought back to live. I was brought back to choose. He stepped forward. Choose what? She touched her chest. To end the cycle or to begin it again. He looked around. The forest, the stars, the world. He asked what she wanted. She paused. Her light dimmed. I want to stay, but I was made to go. He reached for her hand. Then stay. Anyway, she closed her eyes and smiled. The figures behind her rose, raised their arms, and the sky split. One last Temia gate opened. A place not made of matter but of memory. Illyra turned to them and gave a single nod. They stepped back into their ship. They left without sound. The sky sealed shut. She fell into Jack's arms. Her body pulsed faintly. Her voice soft. I gave it back, the core, the seed. The Kojak held her tighter. What does that mean? She looked up at him, eyes full of starlight. And tears it means I am fading, but I am free. He shook his head. No, there has to be a way. She placed her hand over his heart. You were my way, my reason, my anchor. Her light dimmed more. The markings faded. Her skin turned pale like stardust melting into sky. He whispered, stay, please, stay. She kissed his cheek. A warmth passed through him, and for a moment everything was quiet. Then her body dissolved into light. A cloud of shimmering dust. It rose, circled him, then scattered into the wind. Jack fell to his knees alone. He looked up. The stars were still, the sky unchanged, but he felt her everywhere, in the breeze, in the ground. In the space between thoughts, she had returned from the stars to save him, and now she was part of them forever.